Today's lecture will be about the philosophy of Bertrand Russell. Bertrand Russell was another very influential analytic philosopher who helped develop modern logic in the wake of Frege. He also cared about reference and meaning in language, and today we're going to be looking at some important arguments and views of his. Specifically, the required reading was a paper of his called On Denoting, which is probably the most famous paper of his, and a supplemental reading called Knowledge by Acquaintance and Knowledge by Description had some other arguments which we will touch on at the end. In this video, I'm going to be just giving an overview of what we'll be discussing in this lecture. Okay, so if you recall from the last lecture, according to Frege, all names have the same semantic profile. They have a referent and a sense. Now, there is an important qualification, which is that this is the case for all non-defective names. So it's a possibility, and it's an important possibility, which we will address later in this lecture and in this course, that there are names that do not have a referent. So, according to Frege, he acknowledges that there may be names without a referent. However, when it comes to non-defective names, names with a referent, according to Frege, all of these non-defective names have both a reference and a sense. Now, when Frege talks about names, or even proper names, it's important that he means not just what we would call proper names. For instance, the name John, or the name Toronto. So proper names, as we would call them, are named for people, places, and particular things. Okay? But when Frege talks about names, he means a broad class of what we might call referring expressions. Okay? And this includes not just proper names, but also demonstratives, for instance, that man, definite descriptions, for instance, the man, and pronouns, for instance, him, or I, you. Now, Russell's contribution in On Denoting was to claim that this intuitive category of referring expressions does not have a unified semantics in the way Frege thought. Specifically, he argued that definite descriptions are quantificational. Now, what that means we'll come to in this lecture. Furthermore, Russell held that most proper names are actually disguised definite descriptions, so quantificational as well. He gave both semantic and epistemological arguments for these views, which we'll cover in this lecture.